Hello, welcome back to Steins Gate Zero. All the tension suddenly drained from my body as I sank into the sofa.
おじさん、本当に大丈夫？
大丈夫だ。少し緊張しただけだから。
It was a little late, but I took some anxiety meds out of my pocket and swallowed them.
おじさん、さっきの桐生萌香って人のこと知ってたんだね。
え？
She could tell?
マジで？オカリンいつの間に？
どうしてそう思ったんだ？
見ていればわかるよ。
I guess you have to be pretty sharp to survive on the battlefield.
いや、知らない人だ。
アルファ世界線では知ってた。わかった。これ以上は聞かないけど、私なりに警戒はしておくよ。
それでいい。今はな。
一体何のこと？
緊張したっていうことさ。
わかるわ。桐生氏は美人で巨乳でスタイル抜群でメガネ属性まで持ってるもんな。しょうがない。
そうだな。
If she was a part of my life now, I would just have to use her as best I could. Maybe it was because she was gone now, or maybe it was because of the anxiety meds, but I'd calmed down enough to start thinking that way. Of course, who knew if I'd feel the same way the next time I saw her face to face. The Japanese office of the Global Brain Science Comprehensive Research Organization in Waka City, Saitama. Maho Hyajo tried her best to hold back a yawn, but in the end, she'd given up and opened her mouth so wide it covered well over half her face. One reason was that she'd gotten caught up in talking to Kurisu last night and only ended the conversation after it was late into the night. At first, they'd been discussing the research and experiments she'd been doing, but at some point she'd gotten sidetracked into talking about Notaro Okabe. Evidently, he'd been ignoring calls from Kurisu for the last few days. Kurisu was much madder at him than she was when he'd ignored her the first 8 times. It was the first sign of femininity that she'd ever seen from Kurisu Makise. It was cute enough that Maho couldn't help but take the chance to get back at her for all the teasing she always did. She ended up staying up a lot later than she'd intended, and since she was too energized to sleep by that point, she'd gotten out Kurisu's old laptop. She'd started to fiddle with it to see if there was some way to crack the password, and the next thing she knew, it was morning.
パスワード。やっぱりプロにでも頼んだ方がいいのかしら。
何の話だい？
Great, talking to her more. Also, she suddenly heard a voice behind her and almost jumped out of her chair.
そんなに驚くことじゃないか。
教授、戻ってたんですか？
ついさっきね。
He raised up his hands and showed her some plastic bags from a nearby convenience store. He'd left to go get lunch just 10 minutes ago, and she'd been sure he might be back for a while.
それにしても、日本のコンビニは食べ物の種類がいっぱいで本当に素晴らしいね。毎日違う弁当を食べても、1週間もすればすぐに新しい弁当が出る。しかも店によっても味が違うから、毎日コンビニでも飽きないよ。
コンビニのお弁当ばかり
It's
食べて
pretty
いると
nice, isn't it?
栄養偏りますよ。
それでもアメリカの食事に比べればかなりヘルシーだよ。第一、食事についてのお説教だけは魔法には言われたくないね。
Oh, he was right. Nutrition wasn't an important consideration for Maho. In fact, she ate mostly cereal and meal replacements, shakes, which made her diet very unhealthy.
ところで何をプロに頼むって？
A lot of words.
なんでもないです。なんでも。
It wouldn't bother her if Weskin found out, but for some reason, she suddenly decided not to tell him.
そうかい？私でできることなら力になるよ。
ありがとうございます。その時はお願いします。
She stood up and headed for the door.
魔法、どこへ行くんだい？
気分転換も兼ねて秋葉原に行こうかと。
気分転換で行くにしては随分遠いね。ウィンターローに会いに行くと素直に言えば許可しよう。
そんなんじゃ。
違うのかい？
ついでに会いに行ってもいいですけど。
Okabe had a laboratory in Akihabara. Kurisu had told her that last night. She said something about how he'd been avoiding it for a long time and only recently started going there again. Maho was a little interested in it too.
言っときますけど違いますからね。そういうのじゃないですからね。
私はまだ何も言ってないよ。
というわけで、今日は研究は休みます。
ウィンターローによろしく。
First, Kurisu, and now the professor. Why did they keep trying to make everything about romance?
ああいうのもセクハラよね。今の世の中じゃ。
For one thing, she wasn't going to Okabe's lab just to visit him. She wanted to see him again and see if she could get any hints about the password. He had said he didn't know, but he'd probably be able to come up with more than she could on her own. That was what she thought after seeing how he interacted with Amadeus. You could call it a woman's intuition. She was thinking about that when she changed streams and got off at a Akihabara station. She felt like someone was watching her and spun around. It was a weekday, but the station was crowded. She looked around at all the people, but none of them seemed to be paying her much attention.
気のせいよね。
She whispered to no one in particular as she started to walk again. Kurisu had told her the location of the future gadget lab. She wasn't that familiar with the layout of Akihabara, but if she needed to, she could ask her for directions. But what if she came in unannounced and Okabe wasn't there? That bothered her a little, but she decided she could just leave if that happened. Her eyes lingered on the junk parts lined up in the bins at the shops as she walked when she felt someone looking at her again. But when she turned around, she still didn't see anyone. She started walking again, then went around the corner into an alley. And then she was sure of it. Footsteps. She could hear them behind her. Of course, that was nothing special. She would often be out walking at night and hear footsteps behind her. She'd speed up her pace only to see an irritated man walk past a moment later. But this time, for some reason, she was sure it wasn't that. She decided to try walking faster and found the footsteps went faster too. When she went slower, so did they. Whenever she saw a scene like this in a movie, she imagined that she just kicked the guy in the face. Now that it was actually happening, she was too scared to turn around. She fumbled for the phone in her pocket. The idea of calling the police never occurred to her. The only thing she thought of was the name of the man she was trying to meet. She picked it out of her call history and pressed the button with trembling fingers. The footsteps overlapped with the sound of the ringing. The footsteps were almost on top of her, just when she couldn't take it anymore and was about to start running. She heard a voice coming from the other side of the phone. But she didn't get to say another word. By the time she realized that someone had grabbed her from behind, the phone had already slipped from her hands. I asked Malika Courier as I took the paper she offered me silently. He contacted Daru just 10 minutes ago and told him she was on her way to the lab. And she'd arrived right at the time she said she would. She must have been very close when she contacted him. What was she going to do if no one was here? Evidently, it was a report about her investigation thus far. The stack of papers was shaking a little in my hands. I still felt some unease when Malika was in my presence. Maybe it was just because of the anxiety meds I'd taken right after she'd said she was coming, but I was still doing a lot better than yesterday.
どう？おじさん。
やっぱりそう簡単に見つかるもんじゃないな。
そう。
She must have been expecting something, at least a little. There was an obvious tone of disappointment in her voice.
カガリどこで何してるんだろ
With no way to answer her, I just silently flipped through the pages of the report.
どうしたんオカリン？なんか有力な手がかりでもあったん？
いや、そういうわけじゃないんだが。
う見せて
I handed the report over to Suzuha without complaint. I pointed to the part that interested me with my finger.
調査の中で一つ興味深い事実が浮かび上がった。この 1,2 ヶ月の間で椎名カガリという名の女性を探している人物が私たち以外にも存在するらしいということ。どういうこと？読んだままの通り。
Which meant... Oh, my phone started ringing before I could finish the thought. The caller was Maho Hiyajo. This was an important discussion. I just have to call her back in 5 minutes. Oh, she'd forgive me for that much, I was sure. Normally I just ignore and call back later, but
悪い。ちょっといいか。
for some reason I had to answer. That's what it felt like.
もしもし。
もしもし岡部さん、私ヒヤジョです。
She sounded on the verge of panic, and my voice naturally rose to match hers.
どうした？ヒヤジョさん。
今あなたのラボのすぐ近くまで。
Immediately afterward, I heard what sounded like a struggle, and then something hitting something else.
ヒヤジョさん。ヒヤジョさん。どうした？
And then there was only silence.
オカリン？何かあったん？
From the tone of her voice, it was obvious something bad had happened.
知り合いが誰かに襲われてる。
マジ？知り合いって誰？
But I didn't stay to answer his question. I grabbed the nearest thing that could serve as a weapon and ran out of the lab. She said she was close to the lab. If she was coming from the station and had chosen a route that not many people would go down, she was probably... The alley directly in front of the lab. I saw someone there. They were tall and slender, and I could see a tiny silhouette struggling behind them. That was... I knew it. The only girl I knew that size was Maho. Aww. Someone had grabbed her and she was trying desperately to escape. Oh. The person who was holding her turned in surprise at my voice. It was only then that I realized it was a woman and that she wasn't Japanese.
岡部さん。
What the... Did she not understand me? No, but she should have been able to guess what I was getting at. I tried to strike a threatening pose with the weapon in my hand. I finally realized that what I brought was the Siloam saber. Still, it would serve as a bluff.
違うの岡部さん。
It wasn't? It wasn't like what? The woman looked up Maho and smiled. She walked towards me with her arms open wide.
Are you Maho's
Hey.
boyfriend?
Oh, touch Maho. Before I could ask what was going on, she wrapped her hands around my back and giving me a firm hug.
だから違うって言ってるのに。
I had no idea what was going on, but the two soft objects pressed into my chest kept me from moving.
それじゃあ、この人はヒヤジョさんの知り合いなのか。
ごめんなさい。私が早とちりしたせいで。
I'm Judy. Judy Reyes. Pleasure meeting you, Mr. Okabe.
The woman named Judy Reyes offered me her hand, her broad smile like the sun itself.
Nice to meet you.
Meh.
日本語でいいわよ。
Meh.
教授って日本語喋れたんですか？
ええ、実はね。
知らなかった。でもどうして？
女も私くらいの年になるといろいろあるのよ。
Her mischievous wink looked pretty good on her.
それじゃあ改めて。ジュディレイエスよ。よろしくね。
I returned her handshake.
岡部倫太郎です。
レイエス教授は今度日本で開かれる AI 関係の学会に出席するために来日したんですって。
教授っていうことはビクトル・コンドリア大学の
サイコフィシオロジーを研究してるわ。
サイコフィ
精神生理学のことよ。つまり脳の活動によってもたらされる心の働きとか心の病気なんかについての研究をされているの。そういう意味では私たちの研究よりもずっと人の役に立つ研究をされていると言っていいかもしれないわね。
そんなことないわ。あなたたちのアマデウスだってこれからの発展次第では十分に役に立つ技術になるわよ。
そう言っていただけると嬉しいです。
In short, Dr. Reyes had happened to see Maho on the streets of Akihabara and had decided to surprise her by grabbing her from behind.
でもレイエス教授も人が悪いですよ。駅からつけてくるなんて。
つける？魔法？私が？
ええ、後ろをついてきてました
You're
よね。
mean.
ずっと。
そんなことしてないわ。私はさっきそこのショップでたまたま魔法を見つけたからちょっと驚かそうと思っただけよ。
え
Mao had only just relaxed when Dr. Rey's answer drained her face of its color.
ヒアジョーさんつけられていたのか。
ええ、確かにそう感じたんだけど。
レイエス教授誰か怪しい人物を見かけたりは。
Dr. Reyes denied it with that unique shrug that foreigners always do. I looked back over the alley, but of course I didn't see anyone.
じゃあ私の勘違いだったのかし
そうだわ。だって日本は世界一治安のいい国でしょ。
Was it?
魔法はこの後どうするの？
ら。私は
Reyes seemed to sense something in Maho's silence.
なるほど、そういうこと。それじゃあ私は行くわね。リンタロもそのうちゆっくり話しましょう。バイ。
She gave me a meaningful wink as she left. The station was in the opposite direction. Should I have said something? I got a strange sense that she was feeling me out, but it seemed like a waste of time to resist.
というわけで、彼女がヒアジョーさんだ。ほら
So, what is
前に
Maho's
セミナー
height?
で会ったって話したことがあっただろう。
お騒がせしてごめんなさい。
I ended up taking Maho back to the lab where everyone was waiting for my return. Suzo had actually gone out once to look for me, but evidently by that time I was already gone.
ま、でも何事もなくてよかった。
After I gave an introduction and an explanation, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Maho seemed to want to ask a lot of questions about the lab, but I had something I had to finish first.
すまん。どこまで話したんだったか。
他にもカガリタンを探してる人間がいるって話。
そう、それだ。それは本当なんですか、桐生さん。
I looked back down at Malika's report, where she'd written all the details. She'd even hired a private investigator to check it out, which meant that it was probably true.
それが鈴葉という可能性はないんだろうか。
それは私も考えた。でも探していたのは男の人。中には外国人も。
Foreigners. Why would they be looking for Kagari?
こっちでかがりと関わりがあるのは私だけだ。それなのに一体誰が？
Could it be CERN? Maybe CERN realized that she was from the future and had gone looking for her. But if that was the case, then Malika would have to know about it. Now there were no. The rounders were all given their orders individually, so it would make sense if she didn't know what the orders were up to.
椎名かがりはこっちに来てもう12年にもなる。その間知り合いができたとしてもおかしいことじゃないな。
つうか、むしろ誰かの世話にならないと生きていけないっしょ。
That's true.
つまりこの報告からわかるのは椎名かがりを知る何者かがここ最近何らかの理由から彼女を探しているということと、少なくとも最近まで椎名かがりが生きていたっていうことだ。
あ、そっか。
Unless they could travel through time like Suzuha, if they were looking for her, that meant they'd known where she was until she disappeared. If people had started looking for her in the last few months, that meant she'd been alive until then. There was nothing else to be learned from Leika's report.
する。
引き続き調査をお願いできますか？
If people were looking for Kagari and Akihabara, that meant she might still be here.
わかった。
Malika took her payment for the work she'd done so far and left the lab. Dara paid the bill. It seemed that when his future daughter was at stake, he was willing to spend money.
人を探しているの？
Maha had been looking around the lab with interest.
ああ、ちょっと知人をな。
It worried me that some of the people looking for Kagari weren't Japanese. What is this? Time you're getting home? What? Hello? Okay. Even as I was certain there are people all over the world who would jump at the chance to learn more about the time machine. If they somehow learned that Kagari was from the future, that could mean she was caught up in some kind of trouble.
それじゃオカリン、そろそろ冷や上司のことを詳しく。
詳しくって言われても前に説明したぞ。
She was Dr. Leskinen's assistant, and both she and the professor had been very good to me. I was helping with their work a little. I told him all this before.
例えば冷や上司がこのラボのメンバーに加わってくれる的な頂点会はありますか？
ないだろ
じゃあせめて魔法担と呼んでもいいですか？つうか呼ぶ
魔法タン？
あれ名前間違ってた？
そうじゃなくて、その変な呼び方に引っかかったの。
でも魔法担は魔法担って感じじゃんなあオカリン。
俺に振るな。
とにかくその呼び方はやめて。
だが断る。
He never changes, does
そ
he?
れでヒアジョーさん、今日はどうしてラボに？俺、ここのことは君に話したかな？
アマデウスに教えてもらったわ。今日は本来は話したいことがあったのだけれど、まあいいわ。噂のラボを見ることができたし、それになんだかあなたたちも大変みたいだから。
ひょっとしてあいつ怒ってたか？
ええ、とても怒ってたわ。連絡しても出ないって。
That's exactly what I expected, yeah.
え？何それ何の話？
別に浮いた話じゃないからいちいち反応するなって。
岡部さん、やっぱり辛いの？だったらテスターやめてもらっても。
あ、いや、そういうわけじゃないんだ。ただ、
I hated how I was starting to feel dependent on her.
また気が向いた時にでも話してあげて。あの子も寂しがってるわ。
わかった。
Hey, girl. The word only made my heart ache a little. But even so, still didn't talk to Kurisu that day. Don't talk to me about lonely. Several days had passed since Malika had given her report. I checked last night and evidently there was nothing new to say. She had her deadlines for her magazine, she said, and couldn't spend a lot of time on it. That other group of people who were searching for Kagari Shina concerned me, but I couldn't ask her to prioritize it over her own work.
マユシはとっても残念なのです。
ん？もしかしてクリスマスパーティーの話か？
楓さんと吹雪ちゃん、用ができちゃったって。フェリスちゃんはお仕事で、ナエちゃんも店長さんと過ごすことになってて、ダルくんはユキさんと遊びに行くんだって。
結構なことじゃないか。
I'd heard that Suzu had gone through a lot of work to set that up. She was always complaining that Dara wasn't making his intentions clear with Yuki. From Suzu's perspective, her own existence was at stake. Even if it was already fated to happen, something still might interrupt it. More than anything, she probably wanted to see her mom and dad getting along in this peaceful world. If something came out of this, it would probably make her feel better.
参りもクリスマスは家で過ごした方がいいんじゃないのか。この前おじさんがケーキを予約してたぞ。
お父さんに会ったの？
家の近くでばったりな。まゆりをびっくりさせるために大きいのを予約するんだって張り切ってた。
そっか。じゃあその方がいいね。
あ、言っとくが今のは聞かなかったことにしてくれ。せっかくのおじさんのサプライズだからな。
分かったよ。でもオカリンはどうするの？クリスマス。
特に予定はないかな。うちはもともとそういうことする家でもないし。
The guys at school were having a men-only drinking party, but I hadn't been invited. I kept telling them she wasn't, but they insisted on thinking that Mary was my girlfriend. Some of them had it out for me because of that.
確かサンタさんにプレゼントが欲しいって言ったら朝枕元にお野菜が置いてあったんだよね。
どう見ても前の日の売れ残りのな。クレームをつけたらうちはキリスト教じゃねえって逆ギレされた。
Honestly, I'm amazed I actually grew up alright. Well, if you could call how I ended up
ク
alright.
リスマスが終わったら小見間があって、そしたらもうお正月。一年あっという間だね。
そうだな。
It hadn't flown by for me at all. I'd gone through the same span of days again and again. For me, the year had been unimaginably long.
そうだ。ねえオカリン、クリスマスパーティーはできないけどお正月パーティーをするのはどうかな。
I'm so happy you asked.
初詣に行ってそれからおせち料理を食べて今年もよろしくって言って。
ああ、いいんじゃないか。
だよねだよね。うん、じゃあ後でみんなに聞いてみるね。
Mary stood up to go.
さてとマユシーはこれからお買い物に行ってきます。
買い物？
ふぶきちゃん用のコスでね、急に小物が必要になっちゃって。
そうか。気をつけて行ってこいよ。
そうだオカリン、ルカ君がね、オカリンに何か相談があるみたいなの。
That's right, Lukaku had called me. After that, Moki had come and so much had happened that I'd forgotten. Knowing Lukaku, since I told him I'd call him back, he'd probably been waiting for me this whole time.
こっちから連絡を取ってみる。
お願いね。じゃあ行ってきまーす。
Mary put on her coat, waved, and went out the door. Alright, I should get in touch with Lukaku. So he wanted to talk to me.
ルカ子のやつ出ないな。
Oh well, I'd have to send him a Rhine. I typed in my message and sent it. And then I waited for a while for a response to come back. But there was no sign of him even reading the Rhine message. Was he busy with something? For a moment, I thought of going to the shrine to see, but if he was busy, I didn't want to bother him. He'd contact me when he had time. Just when I was thinking about that, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs outside the lab. It didn't sound like Daru. Daru's steps were a lot heavier.
どうぞ。
こんにちは。
Oh.
よかった。岡部さん、ここにいてくれて。
It was Lukaku, the boy I'd just been trying to get a hold of.
すまない。この前の件すっかり忘れてたんだ。それでさっき電話したんだが。
え？あ、本当だ。ごめんなさい。僕の方こそ気づかなくて。
He looked guilty, as if he'd done something wrong.
いや、別にいいよ。それより寒いだろ。入ってくれ。
あ、はい。
But he hesitated, seemingly distracted by something behind him.
岡部さん、その相談の件なんですけど、実は、その前に会ってもらいたい人がいて連れてきたんですけど。 いいですか？
会ってもらいたい人？
えっと
Fukako moves slightly to the side, and a girl appears behind him.
はじめまして。
What? Impossible. The girl there was.
クリス。
よろしくお願いしま
What
す。
the?
どうぞ。
ありがとうございます。
I offered her a cup of tea I poured out of a plastic bottle, and she thanked me in a voice that was almost impossible to hear. For my part, it was all I could do to keep the hand holding the cup from trembling. I took another good look at the girl sitting across from me. Who is this? Not like Lukako. The girl in front of me looked just like Kurisu Makise. Her brown hair, her slightly slanted eyes, her unconcerned expression. Right now, there was no sign of her strong-willed nature, but other than that, they were identical. When I'd first seen her, my heart felt like it was going to stop. But on closer inspection, some parts were different. Like the size of her, boobs. Yep, was she about her age? She looked older than Lukako. I knew Lukako had a sister. Could this be her? She had a quiet air about her that seemed similar to Lukako. But I thought I remembered hearing that Lukako's sister was actually quite cheerful.
岡部さん。
いや。
So she does look a little like Kurisu.
ああ、失礼。俺はそう呼んでるんです。その女の子みたいだから。
I just realized it was a pretty rude nickname, but it was a habit now, and there was no changing it.
そうなんですね。
Her expression softened just a little. She really did look just like her. I took a shallow breath and forced myself to relax.
で、ルカ子はこの人は？
その前に話したことがありましたよね。お父さんのお客さんが泊まってるって。
ああ、聞いたけど。それじゃあもしかして彼女が？
はい。
That was a
ル
surprise.
カ子の父親の知り合いというから、てっきりもっと年配の人かと思っていた。
違うんです。正確に言うと、お父さんの知人が連れてこられた方で。
おお。
So this wasn't the person who was talking about Harumi. That made me feel a little better.
それで相談というのはこの人についてなんですけど。
その前に名前を教えてもらってもいいかな。いつまでもこの人じゃ話しにくいだろ。
Her face clouded. Did I say something wrong?
実は相談というのはそのことなんです。この人が誰なのかを知るにはどうしたらいいでしょうか。
It took a moment before I understood what he said.
待ってくれ、ルカ子。それはどういう？
記憶喪失なんだそうです。
記憶喪失？
はい。
それじゃあ名前も？
はい。
Oh,
ど
girl.
この誰かも？
Oh, sad.
どうして？
わかりません。
Of course not. If she knew, she wouldn't have amnesia.
でもどうして俺に？
岡部さんなら記憶を取り戻すいい方法を知っているんじゃないかと思って。ほら、岡部さんよく人間の脳とか記憶とかすごく難しい話をたくさんしてたから。何でもいいんです。私が自分のことを取り戻せる方法があれば。
待ってくれ。確かにそういう話はしていたが、それはただ興味があるだけで専門的なことは何も。
I knew how the brain worked and how it was laid out, and I knew what amnesia was, but bringing back someone's memories was a different matter. Even the latest medical technology would be useless, unless of course you had your memories stored on a system like Amadeus.
そうですか。
The girl was visibly disappointed.
だったら何か身元を調べることはできないでしょうか。カナさん、本当に辛そうで。
カナさん？
仮の名前だからカナと。 ルカさんのお父さんが名前がないと不便だからって。
ずいぶん安直だな。
Was that okay?
いつまでも名乗る名前でないのだから、それくらいの方がいいと。
I couldn't tell if that was deep or not.
岡部さん、なんとかならないでしょうか。せめて名前だけでもわかれば。
なんとか力になってはやりたいが、やっぱり更新所なんかに頼んだ方がいいんじゃないのか。
更新所、探偵さんみたいなものですか？
ああ、でもそれだって何か手がかりのようなものがないと厳しいだろう。財布とかカバンとか持ってなかったのか？
そういったものは何も。
何も？別に大したものじゃなくてもいい。一つくらいありそうなものだけど。
一つだけ。ただこれが手がかりになるのかどうかは。
She slowly took out a handkerchief, as if it was something that was very important to her. Whatever was inside must have been the one thing she was carrying.
見せてもらっても？
はい。あれ、もしかしてお客さんかな。
Almost at the exact same time Kana opened the handkerchief, I heard Mary's soft voice from the front hall. Evidently she was back from shopping. Suzuha was behind her too. That was a rare combination. Had they run into each other on the way?
あ、まゆりちゃん。あー、ルカ君。ルカ兄さん、そちらの人は？うちに泊まっているお客さんで。
Kana bowed her head a little. For some reason, Mary gave a happy little sigh as she looked at the handkerchief in Kana's hands.
それ、ウーパですよね。
Inside of the white handkerchief was a faded Uva keychain.
好きなんですか？まゆしーもね、ウーパのこと大好きなのです。
もしかして手がかりというのはそれか？
It was an old Uva keychain. Was that really a clue?
でも、このウーパ、いつ頃のものかな。ずいぶん古いみたいだけど。
It really did, come to think of it. Upa was a character from the Rainet Kakeru anime. Upa products had only been around for a few years now, but the one I was looking at was very old.
これ、もともとは緑色だったんじゃないかな。だってこれ、森の妖精さんバージョンだもん。
森の妖精さん？
この前やってた映画に出てきたんだ。ほら、マユシーも持ってるんだけど、ここのところのデザインがちょっとだけ違うの。
I couldn't see any difference at all.
このキーホルダーね、なかなか売ってなくてずーっと探してたんだ。そしたらこの前ルカ君が見つけて買ってきてくれたのね。たまたまお店を覗いたら売ってたから。
しかし妙だな。この前の映画のグッズなら発売してすぐのはずだ。こんなに古くは。
Only then did I realize how pale Kana's face was.
大丈夫ですか、カナさん。
具合が悪いのか？
大丈夫。
Kana tried to stand up and almost fell forward. Ukako quickly grabbed her.
何か冷たいものを。
I went to get a bottle of water out of the fridge when I noticed that Suzuha was staring at Kana in shock.
鈴葉？
そう。
Strangely, Kana wasn't the only one who was shaking a little. Suzuha was too.
それ、そのウーパー。
どうしたんだ、鈴葉？
私は知ってる。そのウーパー、それ。
おい、鈴葉。
What? Kana staggered a few steps towards Suzuha and then a few steps more. It couldn't be. No, there was just no way. But
もしかしてお前かがり
What? What?
お前はかがり
No way.
シーナかがりなのか
What? Kana's eyes went wide. And she slowly collapsed to the floor. Gasp. What the? What? That's
ど
crazy.
うだ少しは落ち着いたか
はいおかげさまで
I have so many questions. Kana had passed out after hearing the name Kagari Shina from Suzuwa, but with help from Lukako and the girls, she woke up 10 minutes later. But she still didn't look very good. I have so many
ル
questions.
カ子それにマユリすまないが何か冷たいものを買ってきてくれないかそれから額に貼る冷却シートのようなものもあると嬉しい
I felt bad for Lukako, but I probably didn't want either of them hearing what we were about to discuss.
わかった行こうルカ君あうん
She actually survived all this time. Lukako seemed interested in hearing about what was going on, but still he went along with Mayuri. What happened next was the problem.
カナさん
かがりお前今までどこで何をしていた
Suzo opened her mouth the second Mayuri and Lukako left. Her words were as sharp as a knife blade, and Kana looked terrified.
一体どういうつもりであの時
待て鈴葉彼女は記憶を失ってる
なんだって
I explained what had brought Kana here.
記憶喪失それじゃあどこで何をしていたかも
What is it?
Ah. あ
Amnesia?
あでもその前に確かめなければならないことがある
Whether or not she was really Kagari Shina.
はい
さっきしていた話は覚えてるか
はい
どうする続きはもう少し回復してからにするか
いえ大丈夫です
She was clutching her upa so hard that her fingertips had gone white. But there was a light in her eyes as she looked up at Suzuha. If this is actually her, I'm
さっきの
so
話を続け
happy.
よう鈴葉お前が彼女をかがりだというその根拠は何だ
そのウーパだよそれはかがりが肌身離さず持ってたものなんだママにもらったんだってお守りだってずっと大事にしてた
Kana slowly opened her hand. The tiny old upa was staring up at us with a silly look on its face. A present from her mom. A present from Mayuri.
カナさんはそのウーパだけが自分が持っていたものだって言っていたが
はい記憶をなくして倒れていた私がただ一つ手にしていたのがこのキーホルダーだったそうです
倒れていた
はい
どのあたりで倒れていたんだ
千葉の参道です県境あたりの近くのお寺の住職さんが偶然通りかかって見つけてもらったそうでその後しばらくはその方のお寺でお世話になっていたんですですがお寺は修行の場でもあるので長く女性を置いておくこともできないと
それでルカ子の家にというわけか
はいその住職さんルカ君のことを女の子だって思っていてそれで年の近い女の子のいる家なら私にとってもいいだろうって盲点だったまさかこんな近くにいたなんて
The guest that Lukako had mentioned a few days ago was probably that priest, which means that Kana, no, Kagari Shina, had been there the whole time. We've been searching blindly for her, without any idea, and she'd been there the whole time. If only I'd taken Lukako's call, we wouldn't have had to go through all this.
それでカナさん 君はカガリという名を聞いて何か思い出すことはないか？
正直を言うとよくわかりません。ただすごく懐かしい感じがします。それに
Kana's words cut off as she looked at Suzuha.
その先ほどの方、まゆ姉さんのこと？まゆ姉さん？
あの子は椎名まゆりと言うんだ。
まゆりさん。あの方を見たとき、なぜだかすごく温かい気持ちになりました。
Even if she was Kagari Shina, she would only have known Mayuri after she'd grown up, but her appearance can't have changed that much, which meant that it would make sense that seeing her would stir some feelings within Kagari.
ねえ、それもう一度見せてもらってもいい？
Kagari.
はい。
Kagari handed the old Upa over to Kana. Wait, what?
やっぱりこ
What
れ
the? Wait,
かなり
hold
が
on,
持っ
what?
てたものだよ。
Okay.
では私はその椎名かがりという
She handed it to
名前だった
herself.
んでしょうか？
そうだな。まだ確証があるわけじゃないが、そう考えるのが妥当だと思う。
いや、間違いない。彼女はかがりだ。そのキーホルダーが何よりの証拠だよ。まゆ姉さんがかがりにあげたものなんだから。でもよりによって記憶喪失だなんて。
The keychain probably did belong to Kagari, but she also could have been gifted it by Kagari Shina, or she could have picked it up off the ground. Of course, Suzuha said that the keychain was very important to Kagari. It was unlikely that she'd drop it or give it to someone, which meant... Then the door opened and Mary poked her head through to see what was going on.
大丈夫ですか？
Oh, not the sad
Oh.
Tuturu, no.
悪かったな、わざわざ。
いえ。
The drinks and cooling sheets were taken out of their plastic bags and put on the desk.
それでその
Ukaka waited a moment for her to take a sip of the drinks he brought, and then spoke with a quivering voice.
かなさんはそのあまねさんの知り合いのかがりさんという方だったんでしょうか？
そうだな。そう考えるのが妥当だと思う。
そうですか。よかったです。名前だけでも分かって。ルカ君。
Kana, that is, Kagari, smiled gently when she saw how relieved Ukaka was.
それならあまねさんはかがりさんの本当のお家を知っているんでしょうか？いや、それは
鈴葉はかがりさんと子供の頃ご近所だったそうだ。でも12年前に引っ越してしまって、それからの行方がわからなかったらしい。そうだな。
そうなんだ。それで最近急に懐かしくなってオカリンおじさんに相談してたんだよ。
Oh,
そういう
Suzuha,
わけだ。
hug her.
だから
It's
鈴
been
葉は
12 years
か
for
がりさ
her,
んの家
hug
族の
her.
ことやどこに住んでいたのかはわからないらしい。
そうなんですか。
Oh, that was the only answer I could come up with. If we told Kagari that she was a time traveler from the year 2036 who come here 12 years ago, it would only confuse her.
あとは彼女が記憶を取り戻してくれれば何がどうなっていたのか全てわかるはずなんだが。
She'd learned her name and met both Suzuha and Mayuri. Mayuri's presence alone had to be a big deal.
かがりさん？はい。かがりさんの上のお名前はなんていうのかな。さっきはよく聞こえなくて。だからよかったら教えてほしいな。その岡部さんたちのお話だとシーナと。ああ、じゃあマユシーと一緒だ。マユシーもね、シーナっていうの。シーナまゆり。シーナまゆりさん。嬉しいな。マユシー、同じ名字の人に会ったの初めてだよ。 そうなんですか。だからこれからよろしくお願いします。はい、こちらこそよろしくお願いします。
Mary was using her natural cheerfulness to try and open up to Kagari. If it worked, maybe she could bring back her memories.
ルカ君から聞いたんだけど、かがりさんは記憶喪失なの？はい。それって自分が誰かも忘れちゃうってことなんだよね。はい。そっか。きっと辛いこといっぱいだよね。
Oh, look how big she's gotten.
自分の大好きな人のことも忘れちゃうんでしょ。それってすごく悲しいことだってマユシーは思うのです。だからね、うまく言えないけど、マユシーもお手伝いするから頑張ろうね。
Mary smiled. I could see Kagari's eyes well up with tears.
急にどうしちゃったのかな。マユシー、何か変なこと言っちゃったかな。そうじゃないんです。ただまゆりさんの言葉を聞いて、なんだか嬉しくって。マユシーだけじゃなく、オカリンもすずさんもルカ君もみんな同じ気持ちだよ。もちろんです。僕もできることがあれば何でもしますから。ありがとうございます、ルカ君、まゆりさん。
I could leave Kagari to Mayuri and Lukaku, and she'd be just fine. The question was what to do now.
ルカ子、頼みがあるんだが。
なんでしょう。
かがりさんはもう少しお前の家に置いてもらってもいいだろうか。
え？
その間に俺たちは彼女が今までどうしていたのかを調べようと思う。
はい、もちろんうちは構いません。
鈴葉もそれでいいか。
It's so cute. Suzuha probably wasn't completely happy with that, but she nodded anyway. Our first priority now is getting back Kagari's memories.
それじゃあルカ君のお家に行けばかがりさんに会えるんだね。まゆしも遊びに行っていい？もちろんだよね、かがりさん。はい。
鈴葉もできるだけ顔を出してやってくれ。その方が記憶を取り戻すにはいいだろう。
オーキードーキー。そうだ、ね、クリスマスパーティーができないから今ね、お正月パーティーをしようかなって思ってるんだ。かがりさんにも手伝ってもらえると嬉しいな。え、いいんですか？私なんかが。もちろんだよね、ルカ君。一緒にパーティーしましょう。
Anytime you got three girls together, they'd start chattering like birds. The girls, although one of them was a guy, began to chatter away. I had my own work to do. First, I had to let Malika know we'd found her. Ooh. Okay. Knowing Malika, she'd respond almost immediately. That was all I needed to do for Malika. But I was still interested in the group who'd been looking for Kagari, and I also wanted to know what she was doing lying on a mountain path. What was she doing out there? And with only an Upa? Could she have been running from someone?
ルカ子、ちょっといいか。
はい、なんでしょう。
かがりさんをなるべく神社の外に出さないでほしい。
え？どうしてですか？
理由は聞かないでくれ。頼む。
はい、わかりました。岡部さんがそう言うなら。
It couldn't hurt to be careful. If it was nothing, then that was fine. Once Kagari got her memories back, I'd know for sure. Nobody knew when that would be, though. The day after Ukaka took Kagari to the lab, I took Mayuri to Yanabayashi's shrine through an Akihabara that was filled with the Christmas spirit.
まゆりちゃん、それに岡部さんも。
Ukaka was smiling. He'd seen us before he could say anything. His smile was far too cute to belong to a man. Once again, I was forced to doubt his real gender.
ルカ君、かがりさんも。てってるー。てってるー。かがりさんすごい。え、何がですか？だってマユシーがてってるーって言っても、最初はなかなかみんなてってるーって返してくれないよ。
初めて会った相手にそれが挨拶なのだと理解しろというのも酷な話だな。
だからみんな何それっていうのに、かがりさんは普通に返してくれたのです。だからすごいなーって。私は別になんとなくそうかなって。
Maybe Mayuri's strange greeting had embedded itself in some part of Kagari's mind. Which meant that even 25 years from now, Mayuri was still saying "Tutu." Well, knowing Mayuri, that wouldn't surprise me at all. You finally get a memory spell? Oh.
岡部さんもトゥットゥルー。
Oh, she's so pretty. Bye.